Good morning and wake up and be wealthy because we are here with a powerhouse. Erica, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. So excited.
You guys are going to fall in love with this woman. So, we are talking how to use your divine gifts as an entrepreneur. I'm just so excited to know what that means and learn more about you. So, before we get into the topic, tell our audience who you are, your journey. Let's just get to know you a little bit more.
Yes, thank you. So I'm Arika Davenport. I'm a mother. I have two boys at home, 16 and 7. I'm a wife going on 10 years. And I am also owner and founder of my business, She Pursues Purpose. And as a purpose coach, I show women, especially women in the corporate world, how to use their God-given gifts to pursue their purpose through entrepreneurship, right? And that is my personal journey and story. Like before I became all the things, I was a woman who really like lost her identity in her roles, right? Like I lost my identity as a wife and as a mom and just as somebody else's employee. Like I was doing all these things for these people, yet it's like, who am I? What do I like to do? What makes me happy? And so I went on just this personal journey, spiritual journey of discovering who I am in God and what I was supposed to do. And from that, I realized that I was really being equipped and prepared to show other women like you're more than the roles that you play, right? You're more than an employee. You're more than a mom and a wife. Like you are a woman who was created for a purpose and you can profit from that, right? And so that's in a nutshell my story and how I became to be founder of She Pursues Purpose.
I love it. So, how do we even discover what our divine gifts are? Is there a process there? Talk to us about how do we know?
Absolutely. So I am a woman of faith, right? So I am all things God, all things faith. And so for me, what I found is that I've created what I call my 5 commandments to pursuing purpose, right? And one of the things, being a person of faith, I discovered that in order to know my God given purpose, that I needed to know the God that gave the purpose, right? It's just like, having I don't know, a cell phone. In order to know how to work the cell phone, you got to know what Apple's rules are or what the regulate, right? And so that's how I really began to, that's the retreat that I called myself. Like I went on a spiritual retreat at home and I really just began to explore who I was and my identity in God. And then the second part is to know yourself, right? And so it's like once I got this foundation of faith strong, I began to really look at who I was as an individual, right? Who I was just as a daughter of God, as a woman of Christ, like who am I outside of my role? So that's all about self-development. You know, I learned a lot about just myself. I got into therapy. You don't have to have trauma to have therapy, but it helped me to process how I think and why I think the way I do and my fears and all of that stuff. And so I'm big on self-care. Like I take myself out on dates every Friday because, you know, I just, again, getting back to who you are as an individual, like not confusing your roles with your identity. And so that's what know yourself is all about. And then know your neighbor. I believe that it takes community. You can't pursue purpose and do the things that you're called to do in isolation. And so this is all about community and being a part of a community, but also understanding that there's a part of the community that you're called to serve. There's a part of the community where your gifts can be utilize that. And then the final parts is all about planning your work and working your plan, right? And so this is the foundation. But one of the things that as a purpose coach, I help women to discover what those gifts are, right? Because we all are naturally gifted and talented and skilled with things. And people don't understand that sometimes that can be a process. Some people are gifted in ways where it's so obvious. You can sing and they're just so great, and you can dance and it's so great. But then for some of us, it takes a little bit of a deeper dive to really explore the natural talents and abilities that we were born with, and then be able to show them how to use that to serve people and to make money doing it.
I think a lot of women, a money block for them though is I feel so guilty doing what I love and making money. Do you
Yeah.
find that in this world?
That is definitely a money block. And if I'm honest, it was a money block that I had to overcome in my journey, right? Like, and I had to understand that I deserve to be wealthy because of the value that I bring to others, right? But it took some time to understand because, especially as women, we're kind of like, wired to think that we have to work hard and we have to hustle and we have to grind and all of this stuff. And sometimes we do, but sometimes we don't. If something comes natural to you, if you have this divine ability to make people feel good about themselves and to speak and to do these things, why not use that in a way that can make money more easily? And so that's definitely something that I had to overcome, and my clients have to overcome a lot too.
Well, and I think a lot of the work that you do, it's being vulnerable. It's being uncomfortable for a woman that doesn't feel like she's like ready. Because it's kind of like I like to say vulnerability is like being naked. It's like, oh my gosh, like in front of a room full of people, right? So
Yeah.
like for that woman that's listening and she's like, I know that this is important, but I feel so uncomfortable. Coach her through that. Like, what would you say to her?
That's why community is so important, right? That's why my third commandment is to know your neighbor, because one of the things, it takes vulnerability and it takes transparency, but you can start small, right? You can hire a coach one-to-one to help you work through that. You can get through a free small Facebook group. You can join a community of women who are in Zoom. What I find is this is the power of community, because even when I have small group coaching programs, these women, they develop a sisterhood and they realize they're not alone. They realize they're not the only one. So it is scary to take the first step towards being, vulnerable. But I try to tell women, like, hey, you're not the only one going through it, right? Like, we feel like that sometimes. We feel like, oh man, I'm the only person. But literally, if you're going through something, two things. One is that somebody else is experiencing that. But two, it's possible that we're going through certain things or we're experiencing certain things so that we can help somebody else. And the only way we can do that is by telling our story and being transparent and being vulnerable. And so sometimes you just have to take people by the hand and walk them through. But there's definitely power in being vulnerable, and just start small. You don't have to tell your life story, but just start small, and you'll begin to see that other people can relate to you and your story as well.
I love the starting small advice because I think we're like an all or nothing society where it's like, I've got to just tell all my story. Like, and it's like, you may not be ready for that. It's like, let's share one page
Right.
of
And we might not be ready for it. Sometimes people could scare us with, like, wait a minute, I didn't ask for that. Yeah. So just starting small and building and building your way and creating that trust, right? Like, building trust and creating that rapport before, you bury your whole life to people.
I love that. So we're at the phase of like we've had the aha moment, we've had the epiphany of like I know what my gifts are. Now I'm ready to use them and make money. I've worked through that money block.
Mhm.
What comes next? Because that like there's a big jump between like woohoo, I'm gonna be like a rich entrepreneur, a wealthy entrepreneur, to like actually creating that reality. So what are some steps that they can take once they've figured out some of their divine gifts?
Yes, and that's where the plan your work and work your plan come in, right? And I tell my, like, the women that I work with and that I talk to, the greatest question you can ask yourself is, who can I help now with what I have now, right? So who can I help now with what I have now? Not going to get another degree, not going to get another certification, not trying to build this, website first. Who can I
Yes.
help today with what I have today? And that is a block for a lot of people, because they think we have to add all these titles and all this, credentials before we get out here and serve. And it's like, no, who can you help now? If you cook really good cookies, bake you some cookies and find you a table to go sell them at, right? Like, it's not as hard as we make it harder than what it really is. And so that's where you sit down and you plan out, okay, what groups of people do I relate to the most? Where do I feel like I could be most valuable to people? What can I do? And then what's available? And then go do it, right? Then go execute. And it'll evolve and it'll grow. Like I tell people, have the expectation of evolution when it comes to your purpose. Like it's going to grow, but most of us get stuck because we don't want to start. And so that's the greatest place for you to start.
I love that because I hear too often, well, I don't have the website done yet. I'm like, girlfriend, like we don't need we let's get on Facebook Live. Let's send a DM. Like most of us don't go to websites nowadays. Like we build relationships. Like don't get me wrong, a website is awesome, but if it's gonna delay you, it's not
Hey,
the
yeah,
right step. So
absolutely.
I love that. So we get to start today and figure out where our people are at. I also hear from women they are going through the motions. They are, doing the DMs, they're going on Facebook Live, they're in Facebook groups, like all the different marketing aspects,
Mhm,
but they're coming up short and not getting clients.
mhm.
What's your advice with that where you're like, "But Coach Erica, I'm doing all the things." Like what's typically happening for them then?
Even in my personal experience, I've experienced that, right? Like I've showed up, I've done the uncomfortable lives, I've done all the things, and I didn't convert for a long time. And what I would tell people is to be consistent, right? As long as you're showing up and being organic and being consistent, because what I have found in my own journey is that people will consume your free content for a really long time, and then one day they'll just buy, they'll just purchase, right? So they've consumed it, and they know what you're about. You've had all these unsuccessful launches, and then one day you're going to look up and people will buy. Another thing is really that goes back to kind of having a strategy, right? Like I'm always asking my people for what they want, because sometimes it's not that there's anything wrong with what we're doing. It's just that people don't want it, right? Like
Yes.
find out what your people want and give them that. Like if so I'm all about surveying your audience and asking questions, and just being willing. Entrepreneurship is just like you're like the scientist who's constantly having these experiments and seeing what's working and what's not working. But the last thing you do is give up, right? Like you keep showing up, you keep adjusting, you keep upgrading, and then hire somebody to help you, right? Like hire someone whose gifting is in marketing and whose gifting, is in creating the content, whatever it is. That's the beauty of us utilizing our gifts, right? Our strengths, our talents, and our abilities. We're not built to do everything. So that's where you can become a part of a community and reach out to people to say, hey, I need help. Maybe there's just not enough eyes out there to see what you have, right? Maybe there's not enough, strategy in place for you to really push this thing and convert. So these are just some of the things that, we just have to kind of experiment out and figure out what works best for us. But keep going, be consistent, hire help, delegate. I'm so for delegating, you know what I mean? Because it gives you more space to be able to create and figure out and strategize and things like that.
Well, and what your gifts and talents aren't, someone else is, like you mentioned earlier. There are people out there that love to fold laundry. It blows my mind.
Damn, don't you get me on that laundry, girl. I'm still looking for somebody to do my laundry. Yeah, but seriously, that is somebody's gift. That is somebody loves to fold laundry, right? And if we're trying to be super mom and super women and not being vulnerable and saying, I don't like doing laundry and I want somebody to do my laundry, then we're stuck doing something we hate and we're not in a space to create and do the things that we love.
Yes, I had a huge epiphany literally less than a week ago because I think there's this stigma around hustling and that it's bad. And so then I was like, okay, I should be working less, right? But like, I love to work, like, because work doesn't feel like work. And then I started feeling guilty for like working so many hours. But the epiphany that I had was when I'm doing what I love, aka my divine talents and gifts, the time flies by. I feel so fulfilled. I feel so happy. It explodes my business, right? And so when I'm not doing things that I love, that's when I lose my spirit and my joy, and I am delaying and procrastinating. And to me, that's hustling. It's
Yes.
doing all the things you don't love.
There it
And
is.
so that was a huge aha for me of like, okay, I'm going to surrender and release how many hours I want to work because every day is going to be different. Like if I'm picking up Emma and doing all the things, my hours are going to be all over the place anyways. But if I'm flowing through my day and loving every aspect of my day, that's what we want.
Yes.
Like no matter what.
Yes.
So I love this so much. And what I love most about your message and your brand is that you encourage the entrepreneur to think of what she loves first and then make money.
Yes. So
It
many.
makes me so happy. Like,
Yes. Yes.
because too often we're like, how can I leave my job? I'll do anything. I will hustle, right? Like, and then we fall in this resentment and frustration in a business that we don't love because it didn't come from the heart.
That's right.
So you are like changing the world, and I am here for it. So, where can people find you? What do you have going on in your business? Like, tell us all the things.
Yes, so I am on Facebook and Instagram, She Pursues Purpose. My website is shepursuespurpose.com. It is going to be updated, it's still up, but it's going to be updated. I have women meet me, the women in my community, we meet every Thursday morning. I have a purpose prayer line for womenpreneurs. And so we meet on YouTube every Thursday morning at 7:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And that goes for about a half an hour. My podcast will be released this month, and that's the Planet and Purpose podcast. And I'm a coach, right? So if you are a person who knows that you want to go through this process of discovering your gifts and figuring out how you can create income and profit from it, then I'm your person as well. You can reach out to me at Arika at shepursuespurpose.com. But yeah, I'm everywhere.
Yes, and Erica spells her name very unique, and I love it. So it's Arika. So
Yeah.
when you email her, I want to make sure you spell it correctly. So you are just, I'm just so excited for you, and we need more of you in the world. And it's very important to build a business that you love, no matter what amount of money that you're making. If we're just chasing money, so Erica's shirt says chase purpose, not money, which is just so perfect. Because if we just chase money, we're chasing something that's not going to make us fulfilled.
That's
And
right.
so when we can chase purpose, the money does come. It's interesting.
It
It's so
does.
cool.
It
And
does.
I think that is truly a practice. It's practicing abundance, that it's
Mhm.
possible that I can be happy and make really good money.
So true. So true.
So, and every woman deserves that.
Yes, you do.
I love that. So, my favorite question to ask all of my guests at the end or throughout the podcast is, what does it mean to you to be wealthy?
To me, wealth, like kind of everything we talked about, it's not just about money, right? To me, wealth is that fulfillment. Wealth is an abundance of joy, an abundance of peace. Wealth means an abundance of money too, right? But it's just not the only thing. And so to me, when I'm wealthy in love and joy and peace and a flow and a spirit that just feels good and just an energy that makes me feel like, okay, life is just great, right? And so to me, that's what wealth is. And it's really just about, as a woman of faith, being and doing who you were called to be and do, right? And from that, we get to experience all the fruits of our labor, including the money.
I love that. That's so good. I love everyone's unique responses to it. Every time I'm like, oh, that's my next favorite one. So you're my favorite one now. So thank you so much, Erica, for coming on the podcast. Make sure you are following her. Go give her some love. Contact her for all of your needs because she is thebomb.com. So good talking to you, my friend.
Thank you.